I thought I was doing the right thing, giving my sister the chance to become a mother. She couldn't carry a child, and I could. It felt simple, loving, even. But 9 months later, I would go into labor for a baby I never expected to love this deeply, and find out that baby was mine all along. I was never supposed to be the mother. I was just the surrogate. That's what they told me. But they lied. This is how it started. It had been a long day, 12 hours on her feet, running between patient rooms at the children's hospital, calming panicked parents and exhausted nurses. Danielle kicked off her shoes the moment she stepped inside her small apartment. She didn't even bother turning on the lights. Her living room was simple. A few picture frames on the wall. One of them showed 2 little girls in matching Easter dresses, her and Rachel. She hadn't looked at that photo in years. But lately, it caught her eye more often than she wanted to admit. The microwave beeped as she reheated old lasagna. She sat on the couch with a sigh, scrolling aimlessly through her phone. And then it rang. Rachel. Danielle hesitated. She hadn't heard from her in nearly a year. She answered anyway. Hey, Danielle said softly. Rachel didn't say hi back, not right away. There was a long pause. I need to ask you something, Rachel finally said. And if you say no, I'll understand. I promise. I didn't know who else to call. Rachel's voice cracked on the last word. Danielle froze. Rachel never cried, never begged, never asked. I can't carry a baby, Danny. Rachel's voice sounded fragile. We tried everything. 4 rounds of IVF, 6 specialists. I even went to that weird clinic in Scottsdale with the crystals and chants. Nothing worked. Danielle stayed quiet. I'm exhausted, Rachel continued. My body is done, but we still have embryos, and the doctor said we could try surrogacy. Silence stretched between them. Danielle already knew where this was going. She just didn't want to admit it. I want you to do it, Rachel finally said. Be our surrogate. Danielle stood up. Her heart was racing. She stared at the fridge, at that photo. You want me to carry your baby? She said slowly. Yes, Rachel. I know it's a lot. I know it's insane, and I'd never ask if I wasn't desperate, but I trust you. I love you, and this is the only way I can be a mom. Danielle turned her back to the photo. I need to think about it, she whispered. I figured you would, Rachel said. Take your time. I mean it. But they both knew what would happen next. Danielle always said yes to Rachel, even when it hurt. Danielle couldn't sleep that night. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, counting the same cracks in the plaster she'd memorized years ago. Her mind raced. She thought of Rachel's voice, trembling. That wasn't normal. Rachel didn't ask for help. She expected it. Always had. She was the center of attention at every birthday, every family dinner, every holiday. Danielle had always been the one just outside the spotlight. The helper, the one who had it together, the one who never needed anything. She thought about the time Rachel skipped their mother's funeral because of a last-minute work crisis. She thought about the wedding Danielle hadn't been invited to, the baby shower Danielle had thrown for Rachel's friend, instead of Rachel throwing one for her when she graduated nursing school. It would be easy to say no. But then, she remembered something else. She opened her phone, scrolled through her saved voicemails. There was one from 2 years ago. Rachel, crying. Another miscarriage, the voice whispered through the speaker. I can't do this again. I don't think I was meant to be a mom. Danielle listened to the message twice, maybe 3 times. And the next morning, she called Rachel back. I'll do it, she said. I'll carry your baby. Rachel didn't respond right away. When she did, her voice cracked again. Thank you. You have no idea what this means to me. But Danielle already felt the weight settling on her chest. Like she just agreed to something she didn't fully understand. 2 weeks later, Danielle flew to Atlanta. Rachel and her husband, Ely, lived in a beautiful home outside the city. Tall windows, a perfectly manicured lawn, and a chandelier in the front foyer that looked like it belonged in a museum. It was the first time Danielle had been there. It didn't feel like family. It felt like a showroom. Rachel greeted her with a hug and too much perfume. You look amazing, she said, kissing Danielle's cheek. You've barely aged. I swear, Cleveland's good for you. Danielle laughed politely. She felt like she was wearing someone else's skin. Eli appeared in the hallway. He was quiet, tall, and professionally distant. They shook hands. Thank you for doing this, he said. Really? Rachel clapped her hands and guided Danielle to the living room. A thick manila envelope sat on the coffee table. "Okay," Rachel said, picking it up. "So, this is the boring part. Legal stuff. Contracts, medical releases, all the necessary things for the clinic." Danielle looked at the stack of papers. It was at least 30 pages. "Do I need to read all of this?" she asked. Rachel waved her off. "It's standard. Just legal jargon. The clinic needs everything signed before we start. We'll cover all expenses, obviously. Travel, insurance, lost wages, whatever you need." Danielle hesitated. She felt a small twinge of discomfort, but she pushed it down. She skimmed through the first page, medical terms, legal clauses. Something about future claims and parental rights. But she trusted Rachel. She always had. She signed at the bottom. When she looked up, Rachel was already smiling. "I knew you'd come through," she said. "You always do." Danielle forced a smile back. But deep down, something felt wrong, like she'd just agreed to something she couldn't take back. 2 weeks later, Danielle stood outside the Laurel View Reproductive Center. It was pristine. White walls, mirrored windows, and a fountain out front that didn't seem to belong in a medical facility. She took a deep breath before walking inside. Rachel was already at the front desk, talking fast and smiling like she knew everyone. "There she is," she said when she saw Danielle. "Right on time. I told them you're the best kind of patient, punctual and low drama." Danielle forced a smile. She wasn't sure why, but something about the way Rachel said it made her stomach tighten. A nurse led them through a hallway that smelled faintly of lavender and alcohol wipes. They met with a man in his mid-50s, Dr. Schultz. Tall, bald, overly calm. "Danielle," he said, shaking her hand. "Pleasure to meet you. Rachel has told me wonderful things." He didn't make eye contact. Not really. His eyes flicked to her, then to the clipboard in his hand. "I reviewed your labs. You're an excellent candidate. Healthy vitals, fertile history. We'll begin hormone treatment today and schedule the transfer in 10 days. Danielle frowned. "Wait, hormone treatment? I thought the embryos were already created?" "They are," Schultz said, "but this is standard prep to ensure implantation success. The body needs to be in optimal condition." Danielle glanced at Rachel, who was already checking her phone. "It's normal," Rachel said without looking up. "I did the same thing when we froze them. Trust the process." Danielle nodded slowly, though a seed of doubt had started to form. Still, she went through with it. Blood work, ultrasound, a lecture about progesterone. No one asked her if she had questions. No one asked how she felt. 10 days later, Danielle lay on a table, wearing a paper gown, staring at the ceiling as soft classical music played in the background. Rachel wasn't in the room. She said it would make her too anxious. A nurse inserted the catheter. Dr. Schultz murmured something about everything looking great. Danielle stared at the ceiling tiles. They were white, identical, cold. A monitor beeped. The nurse smiled. Transfer complete. And just like that, it was done. No celebration, no warmth, just a nurse patting her shoulder and reminding her not to stand up too quickly. Later, as Rachel drove her back to the hotel, she asked if Danielle wanted dinner. Danielle said no. "I'm just tired." Rachel didn't push. She dropped Danielle off with a hug and a half-hearted smile. "You're doing something amazing," she said. "I hope you know that." Danielle nodded. But as she lay in bed that night, one question echoed in her mind, louder than the others. Why hadn't Eli shown up to any of this? The first few weeks of pregnancy were easier than Danielle expected. No morning sickness, no cravings, no fatigue. But there was something else, something harder to explain. She felt attached. She told herself it was just the hormones, that it was normal to feel protective, that carrying someone else's child didn't mean she'd think of it as her own. But at night, when the apartment was quiet and the city outside had fallen asleep, she'd rest her hand on her belly and whisper things. "You're safe. You're strong. You're going to be loved." The words came naturally. Too naturally. She never told Rachel about that. In fact, Rachel barely called anymore. Once a week she'd check in. Quick, polite, always in a rush. "How are you feeling? Taking your vitamins? Make sure you walk every day." It felt like a checklist. A script. She never asked about Danielle's mood, or the dreams, the strange, vivid dreams of holding a baby with dimples and soft hair, a baby who looked like her. And always, always that same whisper, "Mommy." Danielle never told anyone about the dreams either. Not even Shay, her best friend, who she usually told everything. because deep down she knew they didn't sound like dreams a surrogate should be having. One afternoon, Danielle was sitting at her kitchen table, balancing her checkbook when a letter arrived. It was a billing statement from a genetics lab in Atlanta. Her name was on it. Not Rachel's, hers. The service listed was Egg Retrieval and Storage, Phase 1. She froze. She hadn't had her eggs retrieved. That wasn't part of the plan. She picked up her phone and called the number on the letter. After a brief wait, a woman answered and confirmed the service. "Yes, Miss Matthews," the woman said. "According to our system, your egg retrieval was done at Laurel View. Follow-up was billed 2 months later for embryo creation." Danielle blinked. "Embryo creation?" "Yes, ma'am. Using your biological sample. You're listed as both patient and donor." Danielle's heart dropped. She ended the call without saying goodbye. Then she walked straight to the file drawer where she had stuffed the envelope Rachel gave her, the one she barely glanced through before signing. She pulled out every page, spread them across the kitchen table. There it was, a consent form, signed in her own handwriting, authorizing the use of her eggs, another form listing her as donor, and under recipient, Rachel's name. Danielle sat down slowly, both hands pressed flat against the table. Her stomach twisted, not from nausea, but from something heavier, something worse. She whispered it before she could stop herself. "This baby is mine." Danielle didn't sleep that night. She kept looking at the documents, her name on every page, her signature, her initials. She couldn't remember signing most of it. She wondered if Rachel had slipped the extra papers in, if she'd been tricked while distracted. But the signature was hers, and she had no way to prove she hadn't read them. She wanted to call Rachel, confront her, scream at her. But she didn't. She wasn't ready for the lie to be real. Not yet. Instead, she called the clinic. The receptionist put her on hold, then transferred her to Dr. Schultz's office. A different nurse answered. "Hi, I'm calling about a billing error," Danielle said calmly. "I received a statement about an egg retrieval, but I was only a surrogate." The nurse paused. There was a click. Then typing. After a long silence, the nurse said, "According to your chart, you're listed as both the biological mother and gestational carrier. Is that incorrect?" Danielle's throat tightened. "I wasn't supposed to be the donor," she said slowly. "It was my sister's embryo, Rachel Morgan." Another pause. "I'm sorry, Miss Matthews, we can't share any details about other patients. But based on your file, the embryo you're carrying was created from your own egg." Click. The line went dead. Danielle stood in her kitchen, frozen, her stomach turned. Not from the pregnancy, from the truth settling in. Rachel knew. She had to know. Later that afternoon, Danielle called Rachel. Her voice was sharper than she intended. "We need to talk. Now." Rachel didn't flinch. "What's wrong?" Danielle didn't waste time. "I saw the lab bill. I called the clinic. They said the embryo is mine." Silence. Rachel breathed in slowly. "Danny," she said, soft and slow, "you're emotional. You're pregnant. You're tired." Danielle didn't respond. "You probably misunderstood the billing. That clinic has messed things up before. I'll call them and get it fixed." "You forged my consent." "No, I didn't. You lied to me." "No. You volunteered to do this. You signed everything. You agreed." "I agreed to be your surrogate," Danielle snapped. "Not your egg donor, not the biological mother." There was a long pause. Then Rachel's voice changed. "I don't have time for a meltdown right now," she said coldly. "You're pregnant. That's all that matters. You said yes, remember? Don't start twisting it now." Danielle was shaking. "You don't get to gaslight me, Rachel?" Rachel laughed. "That word. You always reach for the dramatic. Look, just rest. Take your vitamins. Focus on the baby. That's the only thing that matters now." And she hung up. Danielle stared at her phone for a long time. Then she dialed someone else, Shay, her oldest friend. When Shay answered, Danielle couldn't speak at first. Her voice cracked. Shay's tone changed instantly. "What happened?" Danielle told her everything. The documents, the call, the embryo. When she finished, there was a long silence. Shay exhaled. "You're not a surrogate, Danielle. You're a mother." Danielle wiped her face. "I think she planned this," she whispered. "I think she used me, lied to me, so she could take my baby and call it hers." "And you think she'd actually go through with it?" Danielle looked down at her stomach. "I don't know anymore, but I don't trust her." Shay was quiet for a beat. "Then you better start getting ready, because that baby's going to need someone fighting for them. And it's not Rachel." The next morning, Danielle received a text. It was from Eli. Just one sentence. "I need to see you, alone." Danielle met Eli at a quiet coffee shop outside Atlanta. He sat in the far corner, wearing a baseball cap and sunglasses like someone trying to hide in plain sight. She sat across from him without speaking. He looked up slowly. "I didn't know," he said. Danielle narrowed her eyes. "Didn't know what?" "That it was your embryo." She said nothing. "I only found out when I overheard Rachel on the phone with the clinic. She was bragging, saying you'd signed everything, that it was locked in." Danielle's heart was pounding. "You knew and you said nothing." "I didn't know how," he said. "Rachel, she's different when she wants something. You know that." Danielle folded her arms. "She lied to me. She made me think I was doing something selfless, and all along she planned to take my child. She kept saying you didn't want kids, that you'd never fight for one, that you'd see it as a gift." Danielle's voice dropped. "She stole from me." Eli slid a folder across the table. "What's this?" "The contract. The real one. Not the one you think you signed. The one Rachel gave the lawyers." Danielle opened the folder and scanned the top page. Her signature, her name. But the date was wrong. It was dated 3 weeks before she ever flew to Atlanta. Danielle's hands shook. "This is forged." Eli nodded. "Rachel kept the original copies. This is the version she gave the legal team. And because it's notarized, it looks real." Danielle stared down at the papers. It was all there. Parental rights waived, no biological claim to the child, full custody to the intended mother, Rachel Morgan. It was airtight. "Why are you showing me this?" she asked. Eli didn't answer right away. Then he said, "Because I don't think I can go through with it. Not if it means lying to a child about where they came from. Not if it means lying to you." Danielle left the coffee shop in a fog. She returned to her hotel room and locked the door. She stared out the window, her hand resting on her stomach. A memory came back. She was 15. Rachel was 11. They were at their grandmother's funeral. Danielle had offered to read a poem. Rachel cried, but Danielle stood tall, reading every word while the adults whispered how strong she was. She was always the strong one. And Rachel was always the one who needed rescuing. But this time Danielle didn't feel strong. She felt robbed. Danielle called Shay later that night. "She forged everything," she said, her voice flat. "Every signature, every date, it's all fake, but it looks real." Shay didn't hesitate. "You need a lawyer." "I can't afford a legal war with her. She has money, power, connections." "Then get smart, quiet, careful." Danielle paused. "What if I went public?" she asked. "What do you mean?" "If I told the story, not to a judge but to the world, if people knew what she did." Shay exhaled slowly. "That's a dangerous road, Danny, but sometimes it's the only one you've got." The next morning, a legal courier knocked on Danielle's door. She opened the envelope with shaking hands. Inside was a court petition. Rachel was filing for a pre-birth order, a legal document to establish her parental rights before the baby is born. Danielle wasn't even listed as the mother. Not even as the carrier. Just a gestational participant. She sat on the bed, the papers in her lap, her stomach suddenly twisting. And for the first time she felt afraid, not just for herself, but for the child. Danielle looked at herself in the bathroom mirror. Her reflection was pale. Eyes tired, a hand resting protectively on her stomach. "I didn't just agree to carry a baby," she whispered. "I signed away my right to fight for it." Then a single tear slid down her cheek. "But I'm gonna fight anyway." Danielle sat in a quiet lawyer's office in Cleveland, 2 days after receiving the pre-birth petition. The attorney, a woman in her early 50s named Miss Carter, wore no makeup and asked hard questions with soft eyes. "Do you have proof of forgery?" Danielle opened the folder Eli gave her and slid it across the desk. "I have 2 versions of the contract. One dated before I ever flew to Atlanta. It has my signature, but I never signed it on that date." Carter flipped through the papers. "This is enough to raise suspicion, but not enough to win." Danielle blinked. "Why not?" "Because you did sign something, even if you were misled. And proving intent, proving fraud, is nearly impossible unless the clinic admits they knew, and trust me, they won't." Danielle exhaled. Carter leaned forward. "If we can prove you were drugged or coerced or that the clinic manipulated medical records, we might have something. But you're going to need a witness, someone who knows what Rachel did." Danielle thought for a long moment. Then she said, "What if her husband talks?" Eli invited Danielle to meet him at a private park near their neighborhood. It was empty, gray skies above. He wore sunglasses, but no one was watching. Danielle told him about the forged documents, about Rachel's petition. "She's trying to erase me," she said, "before the baby even gets here." Eli didn't look surprised. He looked tired. "I'm not defending her anymore," he said. "I just don't know how to fix this." Danielle studied him. "You said you didn't know the embryo was mine, but you're her husband. You signed the documents. You helped her file the petition. So which is it, Eli? Are you just a coward, or were you in on it the whole time?" He flinched. "Rachel made this look like a solution," he said. "You were childless. She couldn't carry. The clinic said it was possible. And she said you'd never want the baby anyway, that it was a win-win." Danielle's voice dropped. "She lied, and you let her." Eli looked up at her. "I can testify if it goes to court." Danielle folded her arms. "Why now?" "Because," he said, "this baby deserves a mother who didn't get tricked into giving them away." Rachel showed up at Danielle's apartment 3 days later. No warning, no smile, no pretense. She stood in the doorway with dark sunglasses, no makeup, and shaking hands. "You're really going to do this?" she asked. "You already did it," Danielle said. "I'm just trying to undo it." Rachel stepped inside without asking. "You think you're the victim here? You think I'm the villain?" Danielle stayed silent. "You were never going to be a mom," Rachel said. "You never even wanted to be one. You don't date, you don't go out, you work yourself to death. I was trying to give you something bigger than you. Something real." Danielle blinked. "By lying to me?" Rachel's face crumpled. "I was desperate. You were selfish. I loved you. You used me." Rachel stepped forward, but Danielle held up a hand. "I'm not giving her up," Danielle said calmly. "So if you want to take this to court, get your best lawyer, because I'm not scared of you anymore." Rachel didn't respond. She turned and walked out. But as she left, she whispered something under her breath. "She'll never forgive you for dragging her into this." Danielle froze. "She?" Rachel smiled, just slightly, then shut the door behind her. 2 weeks later, Danielle went in for her second trimester ultrasound. She was alone. The technician turned the screen toward her. "There she is," she said, pointing. "The baby kicked. Strong. Clear. Perfect." Danielle reached for the screen just a little and whispered, "You're mine. No matter what they say, you're mine." Danielle had been feeling off for days. It started as a tightness in her back. Nothing sharp, nothing sudden, just a dull pull like something inside her was winding too tight. She didn't panic. She'd been through enough stress over the past few months to know that most discomforts were just that. Discomforts. Temporary. Manageable. But this was different. It was the way the pressure lingered long after she sat down. The way her lower belly tightened with a strange rhythm, almost like it was pulsing in time with something she couldn't see. She didn't tell Shay right away. She didn't want to make a big deal out of nothing. Her next checkup was in 2 days, and she told herself she'd just mention it then. No need to rush. Still, that night, she packed her hospital bag again. Carefully, deliberately. She checked the zipper twice. Toothbrush, slippers, extra phone charger, a small blanket with clouds on it. She placed the bag by the door, the same way someone might set out an umbrella the night before a storm, just in case. The next morning, Danielle moved slowly. Everything felt heavier. Her legs, her breath, her thoughts. Even her phone felt heavier in her hand when she picked it up and saw the message from her lawyer. Hearing date confirmed for next Thursday. Petition from Rachel has been escalated. She stared at the words for a long time. Next Thursday. Rachel was still trying to take the baby before she was even born. Danielle turned off her phone and stood at the kitchen window. The apartment was quiet, as usual, just the sound of the radiator clicking and the faint hum of the fridge. Outside, the clouds were hanging low, gray. Still, something was coming. She could feel it in her spine. She placed one hand on her belly and closed her eyes. "Not yet," she whispered. "Please, just hold on a little longer." But her body had already made a different decision. The next contraction hit harder. This time, she had to grip the counter to steady herself. Danielle's first instinct was denial. She told herself it was Braxton Hicks. Practice contractions. False alarm. She made tea, sat on the couch, played a podcast in the background to distract herself from the tightening in her abdomen that was coming a little too predictably. Every 6 minutes, then every 5. By mid-afternoon, she could no longer pretend. She called her doctor's office to ask about moving her appointment up. The woman who answered didn't recognize her name. Danielle spelled it out. Still nothing. "Are you sure you're registered with us, Miss Matthews?" the receptionist asked. "Yes, I was just there last week," Danielle said. "Dr. Carson, I've been seeing her for months." A pause. "Okay, one moment, please." Danielle's hand was already shaking when she heard the woman return. "Miss Matthews, I'm not sure how this happened, but your chart shows you were formally transferred to a different provider." "What provider?" "East Ridge Women's Health. It says your records were sent 2 days ago." Danielle's heart dropped. "I never requested a transfer." "Well, there's a form here with your signature authorizing it." "That's not possible." Danielle could hear typing. She pressed her hand to her belly, which was tightening again, low and firm and aching. "Do you want to come in anyway?" the woman asked. "No," Danielle said. "Thank you." She hung up. Her legs felt like cement as she crossed the room and opened the file folder she'd been keeping near the couch. Inside were the original surrogacy documents, the forged contract, the legal mess that Rachel had created. And now she had added another layer. She was controlling her medical care again, remotely, strategically, quietly. Danielle grabbed her phone and texted Shay. "I think she forged a provider transfer. They said I'm no longer with Dr. Carson." Shay responded immediately. "I'm coming over now, don't go anywhere." Danielle didn't plan to. She was breathing through a contraction when the doorbell rang 20 minutes later. Shay stepped inside, eyes sharp. "She's moving faster than we thought." Danielle handed her the phone. "She's trying to corner me. She wants to be the one holding the pen when the baby is born. Then we don't let her." Shay sat down and pulled out her laptop. "She's assuming you'll go wherever the system sends you, but you won't. We're pulling you out. No electronic charts. No connected facilities. We're going analog." Danielle blinked. "Where?" "I know a place," Shay said. "One town over. Small, safe, no contracts. They only accept walk-ins and referrals. You'll deliver there, on your terms." Danielle stared at her, overwhelmed. "You sure?" "I'm sure," Shay said. "She doesn't own your body, and she's not taking your child." Danielle didn't want to call him, but Shay said it was time. "If we're going to cut Rachel off completely, we need to know exactly how deep this goes," Shay said. "And right now, Eli is the only one who knows what she's hiding." So Danielle called. Eli answered on the second ring. His voice was low and cautious. "Danielle? I need answers," she said. "Real ones. And I don't want sympathy. I want truth." He didn't argue. "Come to the park, 15 minutes. Danielle lowered the phone, hesitating. "I don't know, I've been feeling weird all day. Cramping, pressure." Shay stood, grabbing her keys. "Then I'll drive. You need this, Dee. If you're going to cut Rachel off for good, you need to know everything Eli knows. No more doubts." Danielle nodded slowly. 15 minutes, that's it." 15 minutes, Shay echoed. "Then we come back and focus on you and the baby." She met him near the South Trail Loop, where no one walked this time of day. The trees were bare, stripped by late autumn winds. Eli sat on a bench, hands folded, sunglasses on. Danielle stood, arms crossed. "Why are you helping her file forged transfers?" "I didn't file anything," he said. "Not this time." "She used your name," he looked down. "I've stopped asking what she's doing. It's easier that way." "That's cowardice," Danielle said. "I know." A pause. Then she asked it, the question that had haunted her for weeks. "Did you help her switch the embryo?" Eli flinched. Danielle stepped forward. "Did you help her use my egg?" He didn't answer right away. His silence said enough. "Yes," he said finally. "I helped." Danielle stared at him, 1,000 things rising in her throat. "I didn't know the full plan," Eli said quickly. "Rachel said you'd agreed, that she'd already gotten your consent, but the clinic needed a cleaner version on paper. She said it was just paperwork." Danielle's voice was flat. "She lied. I realize that now." She took a breath, held it. "Why would you even do it?" Eli's answer came slowly. "Because we'd tried everything, and Rachel was losing it. She said you were the only hope we had left. And when she told me she wanted your baby, not just your body, I was too weak to stop her." Danielle blinked. "Say that again." Eli swallowed. "She didn't want a stranger's egg. She said if the baby couldn't be hers, it should at least come from someone she trusted. Someone with the same blood, someone better." Danielle felt her knees weaken. "She wanted to raise my child as her own," she whispered. Yes, you went along with it. I didn't think you'd ever find out. She laughed once, dry and sharp. Well, I did. Eli nodded. I'll testify if you need me to. I'll tell the court everything, the documents, the call logs, even the clinic emails. I kept copies. Danielle's jaw clenched. I don't want your apology, she said. I want my life back. Eli nodded again. Then I'll help you take it. Back at Shay's apartment, Danielle paced while Shay sat cross-legged on the floor, her laptop open and notebook spread around her like a war table. Shay had always been good in emergencies, fast-thinking, cool-headed. But even she looked tense now. She's not just manipulating, Shay said. She's preparing for something. The forged signature. The doctor's switch. The way she tried to change your provider without telling you. That's not panic. That's strategy. Danielle nodded slowly, her arms wrapped around her belly. She wants control the moment the baby is born. She wants to walk into a hospital with a court order in one hand and a release form in the other. Shay pointed to a folder on the table. I talked to a birth center this morning. Off the grid. Paper-only intake. It's in New Haven, across the state line. They're willing to admit you under emergency protocol. No digital file, no alerts, no automatic transfers. We'll register you as a late referral patient and pay in cash. Danielle stared. You're serious. I'm dead serious. What if Rachel finds out? She won't. She doesn't know anyone there. And this center doesn't answer to corporate chains. It's basically one midwife and 3 nurses. That's it. Danielle sat down slowly. I'm scared. I know. What if something goes wrong? Shay didn't answer right away. Then she said, if something goes wrong, I'll be there. If we have to, I'll drive you straight to the ER myself, but I trust this place more than I trust Rachel's people. And I trust you more than either of them. Danielle blinked back tears. What if I go into labor before we can get there? Then we move now, Shay said. Bag is packed? Danielle nodded. Then let's go. They left within the hour. Danielle in the passenger seat, Shay behind the wheel, the hospital bag tucked in the back seat like precious cargo. It was late afternoon by the time they crossed the state line. The air felt different, lighter, colder. Danielle breathed deep and whispered to the baby inside her, We're almost free. The midwife, a woman in her early 60s named Nora, met them in the parking lot of the birthing center. She was calm, focused, dressed in a worn sweatshirt and jeans that somehow made her feel more qualified than any doctor Danielle had met in Atlanta. She didn't ask too many questions, just took one look at Danielle, helped her out of the car, and said, We've got time but not much, let's get her inside. The building looked like an old farmhouse, nothing like the sleek, sterile clinics Danielle was used to. The walls were soft blue and the floors creaked under her feet. It smelled like lavender and antiseptic. The windows were open. The air was clean. For the first time in months, Danielle felt safe. Until the contractions hit harder. She was only 33 weeks. She gripped the edge of a doorway, bent forward, and gasped. Shay was at her side instantly. Nora led them to a small delivery room at the back of the center. It was warm and quiet. No machines, no beeping monitors, just a bed, a rocking chair, and a small table stacked with towels and blankets. Danielle changed into a gown, breathing heavily. I thought I had more time, she said between contractions. Nora checked her, her expression unreadable. You're fully effaced, dilated to 5 centimeters. It's happening, honey. Danielle looked at Shay, panic in her eyes. I'm not ready. Shay squeezed her hand. You're ready? She's ready. You both are. Danielle gritted her teeth as another contraction hit. Stronger now. Fiercer. The room blurred around her. She wasn't supposed to be here yet. The court hearing was a week away. Her hospital bag wasn't even zipped. The formula she'd ordered hadn't arrived. The car seat was still in its box. But the baby didn't care about any of that. She was coming, now. Over the next hour, the contractions intensified. The midwife moved around the room quietly, giving instructions to the nurses in a low voice. They spoke to Danielle, gently but firmly, guiding her breath, helping her move, giving her warm cloths and water and reassurance. Shay never left her side. You're okay, she whispered over and over. You've got her. She's yours. Danielle kept her eyes on Shay's face, grounding herself in her best friend's calm. Another contraction, then another, then a blur. Sweat on her skin, heat down her spine, pressure she didn't know a body could hold. And then a breaking, a shift, and the sudden, unbelievable relief of release. A sharp cry filled the room. Danielle gasped. The world stopped. "She's here," Nora said softly. "You did it." A small, wriggling body was placed against Danielle's chest. Tiny fists, a dark head of hair. A scream that rattled the windows. Danielle stared at her, stunned. The crying slowed. The baby blinked up at her. Danielle whispered, "Hi." She didn't cry, not yet, because the fear wasn't gone. She looked at Shay, eyes wide. "What if Rachel finds us?" Shay nodded slowly. "She might try." Danielle held her baby tighter. "But she's not getting anywhere near her." The room was still, no machines humming, no doctors rushing, no loud voices cutting through the air, just the soft, steady breathing of a newborn pressed against her chest. Danielle stared down at her daughter. Her daughter. The weight of that word settled over her like a warm blanket. The baby's hand was impossibly small, her skin the color of warm honey, already curling her fingers against Danielle's collarbone like she belonged there. Danielle hadn't cried during labor. Not when the pain hit, not when the panic spiked, but she cried now, quietly, without shame. Tears rolled down her cheeks, and she didn't wipe them away. This child, her child, had been carried under threat, under pressure, under someone else's control. And yet somehow she'd arrived into the world untouched by it. Real. Hers. "She's beautiful," Shay whispered. Danielle didn't answer. She couldn't. She was too busy memorizing the curve of the baby's chin, the faint birthmark near her left ear, the way her eyelids fluttered like leaves in a breeze. A nurse entered gently and checked the baby's vitals. Nora returned to say the baby was stable, but early, and they'd monitor her breathing and reflexes closely. Nothing alarming, just precaution. "She's a fighter," the midwife said with a soft smile. Danielle looked up. "She has to be." The hours blurred together. The sun dipped below the horizon. The room dimmed. The baby slept, curled against Danielle's chest like she was still inside her. Danielle barely moved. She felt as if any shift might break the spell. She wanted to freeze time, to live in this exact moment forever, untouched by paperwork or court orders or Rachel. But she knew better. She knew this wasn't over. It was just beginning. There would be more legal filings, more arguments, more accusations. But now Danielle wasn't just defending herself. She was defending her daughter. Her voice, once hesitant, now held a steel edge. "I don't care what she forged," she said softly. "This baby is mine." Shay, sitting nearby, nodded. "We'll protect her." Danielle nodded too. But deep down, she knew something that Shay didn't. Rachel wouldn't stop. She wouldn't back down. Not after coming this far, not after being exposed. And that meant Danielle would have to do more than fight. She'd have to win. It was barely 8 a.m. when Danielle heard the knock. 3 quick hits, sharp, impatient. Shay, who had crashed on a futon in the birthing room, snapped awake and looked toward the door. Danielle was holding the baby, her heart already racing. Another knock. Then a voice. "Open up, it's Rachel." Danielle froze. Shay stood up fast, grabbed a robe, and stepped into the hallway before Danielle could stop her. She cracked the front door open just enough to see Rachel on the porch. No makeup. Hair in a tight bun, expensive coat wrinkled and open over a pressed blouse. Her eyes were bloodshot. In her hand was a thick yellow envelope, worn at the edges like it had been gripped too hard. "You need to leave," Shay said. "I have a court order," Rachel said, trying to push the door open. Shay blocked her with her whole body. "No, you don't. The hearing's next week, and you were specifically told not to interfere with medical care until then." Rachel's voice dropped. "She's not safe here. That baby was born premature. She needs real care." "She's been monitored by licensed professionals since the minute she arrived," Shay said. "You're not a doctor. You're not even on her paperwork." Rachel's voice sharpened. "That's my baby." "No," Shay said flatly. "She's not." Inside the room, Danielle held her daughter tighter. The baby stirred but didn't cry. Danielle could hear every word through the thin walls. And even though her body still ached from labor, even though her heart was beating fast, she felt something else rise in her. Resolve. She stood up, walked slowly to the door, and opened it wide. Rachel's eyes locked onto hers immediately. There was no fake warmth in her expression now. No sisterly pretense, just fury. "I should call the police," Rachel hissed. "For what?" Danielle asked, her voice calm. "Giving birth to my own daughter?" "I have documents." "Forged ones," Danielle cut in. "I have those too, and I have a witness who helped you falsify them. I have your husband's emails, your voice on phone calls, your signature on an early termination letter that you never thought I'd see." Rachel blinked, just once. Danielle stepped forward. "You're not walking into this house. You're not taking one step closer to her. Because this baby was never yours. You just wanted to steal what you couldn't create." Rachel's lip curled, but her voice cracked. "You don't know what it's like to want something that badly." Danielle's voice didn't rise. It didn't shake. "I do. I just never wanted to take it from someone else." Rachel's hand tightened around the envelope, but she didn't say anything else. Then Shay closed the door, slowly, deliberately, and locked it. Rachel didn't knock again. She just stood there for a few seconds longer, then walked away. Danielle leaned against the wall and exhaled deeply. The baby stirred again, letting out a soft, sleepy sigh. "You're safe," she whispered. But even as she said it, Danielle knew the real fight was still ahead. The courtroom wasn't going to be quiet, and it wasn't going to be fair. But it was coming, and this time, she'd be ready. The courtroom wasn't what Danielle expected. It was smaller, quieter. The kind of space where the walls felt too close, where everyone could hear the ticking of the second hand on the judge's clock. No jury, no cameras, just a family law judge in a dark robe, 2 attorneys, and 3 people whose lives had been torn open. Danielle sat at the petitioner's table, her lawyer beside her. Shay was on the bench just behind, calm and steady, like a lighthouse through fog. Rachel sat across the room, alone. Eli hadn't come with her. Danielle knew why. He was about to take the stand. The judge glanced down at the folder in front of him. "This hearing is to address the parental claims and custody rights regarding a minor child born prematurely to the biological mother, Ms. Danielle Matthews. Claims have been made regarding gestational surrogacy, forgery, and medical fraud." He looked up. "This is a high-conflict case, but today, the court will examine the facts." Danielle's lawyer rose first. "We will prove Matthews never legally surrendered her parental rights, that the documents submitted to this court were forged, and that Miss Morgan's actions were not only manipulative but criminally deceptive." Then Rachel's lawyer stood. "My client was under the impression she had a legally binding surrogacy agreement. She acted in good faith. She believed the child was hers, emotionally, if not biologically." Danielle didn't flinch, but her fingers dug into the edge of the table. Eli was called next. He stepped into the witness box, wearing a plain suit. He looked exhausted. Danielle couldn't tell if it was guilt or just fear. He was sworn in, and Danielle's attorney began. "Mr. Morgan, did you assist your wife in preparing surrogacy paperwork involving Ms. Danielle Matthews?" "Yes." "Were you aware that the documents submitted to this court had false dates and signatures?" Eli hesitated. "Yes." "Did you personally alter any legal forms?" A pause. Then he nodded. "I copied Danielle's signature from a hotel registry she signed. Rachel said it was just for the clinic, that she'd spoken to Danielle, and everything was agreed to." "Did she speak to Danielle?" "No." "Were you ever told that Danielle had changed her mind?" Eli swallowed. "She never had a chance to make one. The plan was already in motion before she knew." Murmurs moved through the back row. Rachel sat stiff, jaw locked. Later, Danielle was called. She walked to the stand slowly, her body still recovering, but her voice clear. The judge looked at her. "Miss Matthews, do you wish to retain full legal custody of your daughter?" "Yes." "Why?" She took a breath. "Because I never agreed to give her up. I never signed the real contract. I was told I was helping my sister, but it was a lie. Every step of the way." Her lawyer handed her a folder. Inside were the original scans of the pre-birth petition, the falsified documents, and a letter from the birth center confirming Danielle had listed herself as the sole guardian at time of delivery. "I carried her," Danielle said. "I fought for her. I never gave her away. And I won't now." Rachel's lawyer tried to object, but the judge waved him off. After reviewing the evidence, the judge spoke. "This is not a simple surrogacy dispute. This is a case of fraud, coercion, and identity theft." He looked at Rachel. "Miss Morgan, your actions were calculated. You manipulated the system, your husband, and your own sister. You exploited your position and used your access to privileged systems to mislead multiple institutions." Rachel didn't respond. Her face was frozen, a mask of practiced stillness. Then the judge turned to Danielle. "Effective immediately, you are awarded full legal custody of your daughter." Miss Morgan is to cease any and all attempts at contact, physical or digital. This court finds your account credible and your rights fully restored." Danielle didn't cry. She just nodded once, like she'd already known. Because she had. Because for the first time in her life, she had stood up, and the world finally believed her. The courthouse emptied slowly. Danielle didn't speak to Rachel. She didn't need to. There were no final words, no dramatic confrontation, just silence. Rachel had sat frozen after the ruling, her eyes fixed on a point no one else could see. When it was over, she walked out with her lawyer and never looked back. Danielle didn't follow. She held her daughter in the waiting area, surrounded by a small cluster of people who mattered. Shay, her attorney, one nurse from the birthing center who had shown up uninvited just to offer support. No balloons, no celebration, just peace. Later that night, Eli sent a short message. "I'm sorry, I've left the state. I won't interfere again." Danielle didn't reply. She deleted the message and blocked his number. The weeks that followed passed slowly. The news spread through whispers, a private scandal in a city where secrets traveled faster than traffic. No one said Rachel's name directly, but everyone knew. She took an unpaid leave from work, moved out of the gated house, filed for separation. Danielle heard that she tried briefly to appeal the court decision. It was denied within days. The damage was done. To her marriage, to her reputation, to her family, but not to Danielle. Because Danielle had already lost everything once. And now, for the first time in years, she was rebuilding from truth, not pain. The apartment felt different now. It was still small, still quiet, but there were new sounds woven into the silence. The rustling of blankets in the early morning, the soft gurgles of a baby stirring, the gentle, uneven breaths of a life just beginning. Danielle would sit at the window in the early hours, her daughter nestled in her arms, the sky still pale with night. Sometimes she would hum, not lullabies, old gospel songs her mother used to sing, ones Rachel always rolled her eyes at. Now they came back like prayers. She didn't tell the baby everything, not yet. But she kept the papers, the court ruling, the DNA test, the photo of her, minutes after giving birth, tears on her cheeks, and a look in her eyes that even she didn't recognize. And one day when her daughter was old enough, she'd tell her what happened. How she was almost taken, how she wasn't just born into this world, she was fought for, loved into existence, chosen and kept. 3 years later, the house was small, but the yard made up for it. Just enough grass for bare feet, just enough space for a small inflatable pool in the summer, and a fire pit ringed with folding chairs that squeaked when you leaned too far back. Danielle liked the squeaking. She liked the weeds too. The kind that grew no matter how many times she pulled them. That kind of resilience felt familiar now. Inside, her daughter was napping. 3 years old, stubborn like her mama, with a vocabulary that changed every week and questions that came like machine gun fire. Danielle didn't mind the questions. She liked the ones about animals, about the stars, about where music came from. She wasn't ready for the other questions, not yet. The court had sealed the case. No names in the press, no leaks, no interviews. Danielle had kept it that way. She didn't need sympathy, and she didn't owe anyone her story. But she had written it anyway, not for the world, for her daughter. She kept the journal in a locked drawer, wrapped in a baby blanket from the birthing center. Inside were court transcripts, text messages, scanned images of the forged documents, and handwritten notes she added whenever she remembered a detail too small to matter in court, but too sharp to forget. She'd started it as a way to process. It became something else. A record, a map, a warning, the truth without edits. That afternoon, after putting her daughter down for a nap, Danielle sat at the kitchen table with a letter she'd written and rewritten more times than she could count. It was addressed to Rachel, unsent, always unsent. She unfolded it, rereading the last paragraph like she did every couple of months. "You didn't want a child. You wanted control. You didn't see me as your sister. You saw me as a means to an end." She paused there. She'd never known if that was fair. Maybe Rachel really had believed she could love the baby. Maybe she thought blood could be replaced by intention. Danielle had learned that wasn't true. You could fake a signature. You couldn't fake motherhood. A knock at the door pulled her from the page. It was Shay. She came in without asking, already pulling off her shoes. I brought you frozen pizza and a bottle of wine you won't drink until that kid's 18, she said. Danielle smiled. They sat on the couch, letting the silence stretch. You still writing those letters? Shay asked. Danielle nodded. Yeah. You ever gonna send one? No. Shay paused. You think she ever thinks about it? About her? Danielle stared out the window. I think she tries not to. They sat that way for a long time, the TV on mute, the house still. Then Shay asked what she always asked when they sat too long with the past. Do you regret it? Danielle didn't answer right away. She looked at the staircase where her daughter's bedroom door sat slightly ajar. The edge of a soft pink nightlight glowed from within, and she could just make out the curve of a tiny leg poking out from under the blanket. Regret? Danielle had lost a sister, a family, a version of her life she'd spent years trying to preserve. But what she gained? She turned to Shay and answered quietly, No, I don't regret any of it, not even the pain. Later that night, long after Shay had gone, Danielle sat down and wrote one more letter. But this one wasn't for Rachel, it was for her daughter. She didn't plan to give it to her anytime soon, maybe at 16, maybe 21, maybe the day she held her own child. But it would be ready. She dated the top of the page and began, You were born into a mess, not by your fault, not even by mine. But what matters is this, you were always mine, and I loved you before I knew your name, before I heard your heartbeat, before I even believed I deserved you. She paused. Then she continued, The world will try to tell you who you are, who you belong to, what you owe the people who gave you pain. But you don't owe them anything, not forgiveness, not silence, not even hate. She looked at the words, sat with them, then added one more line. Family isn't who shares your blood, it's who would bleed for you. She signed her name, folded the paper, slipped it inside the journal with the rest. Outside, a dog barked, a car passed. Inside, the baby monitor hummed. Danielle turned off the light and stood in the dark, the soft glow of the kitchen clock blinking 9:11 p.m. Just before going upstairs, she whispered one last line, not to herself, not to Shay, not to Rachel, to the empty room, to anyone who might be listening, to every mother who had ever been doubted. If protecting my daughter makes me the villain, then maybe I was never the hero to begin with. If this story moved you, made you think, or stirred something you didn't expect, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. We're just getting started here at Everyday Secrets, and your support helps bring more true inspired stories like this to life. Someone out there needs to hear this. Be the reason they do.